After the Harkin debacle, the friends of Bush's dad got him a seat on another board of a company owned by the Carlyle Group.
We wanted to look at which companies actually gained from September 11th. Turned up this company, Carlyle Group. The Carlyle Group is a multinational conglomerate that invests in heavily government-regulated industries like telecommunications, healthcare, and particularly defense. Both George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush worked for the Carlyle Group, the same company that counted the bin Laden family among its investors. Carlyle Group was holding its annual investor conference on the morning of September 11th in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Washington, D.C. At that meeting were all of the Carlyle regulars. James Baker, likely John Major, definitely George H.W. Bush, though he left the morning of September 11th. Shafiq bin Laden, who is Osama bin Laden's half-brother, and was in town to look after his family's investments in the Carlyle Group. All of them together in one room watching as the planes hit the towers, and that in fact the bin Laden family was invested in one of their defense funds, which ironically meant that as the United States started increasing its defense spending, the bin Laden family stood to gain from those investments through the Carlyle Group.
Our Commander-in-Chief, President George W. Bush.
With all the weapons companies it owned, the Carlyle Group was, in essence, the 11th largest defense contractor in the United States.
Thanks a lot.
It owned United Defense, makers of the Bradley Armored Fighting Vehicle. September 11th guaranteed that United Defense was going to have a very good year. Just 6 weeks after 9/11, Carlyle filed to take United Defense public, and in December made a one-day profit of $237 million. But sadly, with so much attention focused on the bin Laden family being important Carlyle investors, the bin Ladens eventually had to withdraw. Bush's dad, though, stayed on as senior advisor to Carlyle's Asia board for another 2 years.
As unseemly as it seems to know that George H.W. Bush was meeting with the bin Laden family while Osama was a wanted terrorist well before September 11th. It's very discomforting for Americans to know that. George H.W. Bush is a man who has obviously incredible reach into the White House. He receives daily CIA briefings, which is the right of any ex-president, but very few ex-presidents actually exercise that right. He does. And I think in a very real way, they are benefiting from the confusion that arises when George H.W. Bush visits Saudi Arabia on behalf of Carlyle and meets with the royal family and meets with the bin Laden family. Is he representing the United States of America, or is he representing an investment firm in the United States of America, or is he representing both? This company is about money. It's not about conspiracies to run the world or engineer political maneuvering and things like that. It's about making money, and it's about making a lot of money, and they've done very well.
Did the Bush administration gain from September 11th? Answer, yes. Does that tell you anything? No. Every authoritarian system in the world gained from September 11th, and it was immediately predictable. I remember my first interviews with journalists a couple hours afterwards. The first question I was asked is, about this, and I said, look, every power system in the world is cheering. The Russians love it. It's giving them an excuse to increase their atrocities in Chechnya under the pretext that they're defending themselves from terror. The Chinese love it. They're going to step up their atrocities in Western China against the Uyghurs, claiming it's defense against terror. Indonesia loves it. They're going to go on a rampage in Aceh and massacre everyone because they have to defend themselves against terror. Ariel Sharon will go wild in the occupied territories because we have to protect ourselves from terror. And so it continues. In fact, just about every country, the more violent ones just extended their own violence, but the less violent ones, say like England or the United States or France, immediately imposed what they called protection against terrorism acts of one kind or another. which had almost nothing to do with terror, but a lot to do with disciplining their own populations. So if you take a look around the world, the more, what are called the more democratic societies, instituted mechanisms of control of their population under the pretext of defending themselves against terror. So, and this was completely predictable. I mean, this happens after, even after an earthquake, things like this happen. Power systems will exploit it to expand their own power over their primary enemies, which are their domestic enemies, their own population. And if they happen to be carrying out violent repression, they'll extend it. So that the Bush administration gained from it, although true, that doesn't seem to tell you anything. It just says they're just one of the power systems in the world, so they gained from it.
Silverstein, a commercial real estate tycoon with international political connections, acquired a 99-year lease on the World Trade Center complex in the spring of 2001. Throughout the summer, he reworked the insurance policies on his new property, making sure that it was covered for acts of terrorism. Explicit in the lease agreement was Silverstein's right to rebuild the complex if it were destroyed. After 9/11, Mr. Silverstein fought his insurers in court to obtain double his policy limits for the destruction of his property, maintaining that the double hijacking constituted 2 disasters caused by terrorists, not just one. He won and was awarded over $7 billion, a magnificent return on his original $15 million investment.